This week, meet the man who challenged Dave Ramsey's claims about reverse mortgages. Welcome back to the Industry Leader Update. Perhaps you've seen them on television or heard their advice on the radio. Financial commentators dispensing advice in the most confident manner to millions of Americans that are seeking solutions. But are they getting the honest and accurate advice they deserve? What if that advice is simply wrong, misleading, or even worse, leaves the audience in a bad financial position? Fact-checking the reverse mortgage claims of supposed financial experts is a long-established tradition amongst reverse mortgage professionals, and it continues to this day. Last week, one well-known industry leader took one of the nation's largest nationally syndicated financial commentators to task. Case in point, the NASDAQ column fact-checking Dave Ramsey's reverse mortgage claims, written by Fairway Independent Mortgages, Harlan Accola, with contributions from Dan Holtquist. Thanks for being here, Harlan. So what led you to take on the nation's largest syndicated financial commentator on the topic of reverse mortgages?
Well, when I started in the mortgage business, I was very into Dave Ramsey stuff. I mean, I read all of his books. I talked to other people about it. I explained the debt snowball. And the fact is that some of those things make a lot of sense. It's not like it's all awful stuff. But when I started talking to financial advisors and insurance agents and people that were a lot more knowledgeable than me, I realized that a lot of that stuff just wasn't correct. And I started checking into it, and I felt, how could this happen? This guy is in churches all over the country, and all of these books are published, and thousands of people pay attention to him, and now this stuff is wrong. And I felt really, I felt just bad about it, and I was irritated. And then the further that I got into the whole reverse mortgage business, because I originally was doing this with the forward mortgage clients, 18 years ago when I got into the reverse mortgage business and realized how wrong his advice was, I felt a huge obligation to get that news out to my clients. I remember talking to a client one time, and she said, well, I appreciate your advice, but Dave Ramsey's on the radio and you're not, and so I think we'll just follow Dave Ramsey. And it was like, yeah, but he's wrong. So that's why when I talked with Dan about this several months ago, and I knew that Dan had wrote some columns on his blog, Understanding Reverse, it was, we should just really get this information out. I write for NASDAQ.com. Let's work together on getting some information out of what's true. And we're not going to bash his personality or what's going on with some of the gossip about his company and everything else. We're just going to talk about his specific claims and whether they're correct or not, and do a fact checking. Because after all, everybody talks about fake news now. And, here's an opportunity that we could get the information out, because Dan's column in Understanding Reverse, when he put his blog out before, was about how Dave Ramsey is hurting American seniors. And that was the truth. And we just wanted to make sure that this information got out there. And judging by the reaction from a lot of financial advisors and the number of shares that grabbed this on LinkedIn and so on, we know that this resonated with a lot of folks.
So did you have some concern? I mean, Dave Ramsey is, if not probably, the largest nationally syndicated financial commentator. Were you concerned with taking him to task publicly on these misconceptions and, quite frankly, outright inaccurate statements that he was making?
Well, there's no question you always worry about somebody that's got a lot of money and a lot of power and a bully pulpit, so to speak. But we knew that we had all of these things heavily footnoted. There was no question from the FHA guidelines and the rules that it was there. And we didn't make any general comments like, we think that Dave Ramsey is a jerk and we don't like the way he comes across. We're not talking about any of that. We're just saying, hey, what he said is not true, and here's why. And you know how meticulous Dan Holtquist is and how much he follows all of the details, I was very confident of his research and the follow-up on each of those things, point by point. There was no question. And it wasn't something that we were trying to smear the man or even his show or anything else. Our goal was simply to say, hey, this is what's said, that's not correct, and don't make decisions based on this fact because it's not true. I can't count how many people have told me, yeah, but Dave Ramsey says that you can lose your house. That's one of the things that are repeated. If I had $1 for every time I heard that you're going to lose your house if you get a reverse mortgage, my goodness, I'd have millions, because that's what everybody thinks. So we had to get that out, because if something is repeated enough times by the right person, it is going to be believed. And when it's repeated in churches all across the country, that gives it a tremendous amount of validity that it does not deserve.
So this was obviously not an ad hominem attack, but you were specifically challenging statements made, and those were well documented. And speaking of what you've documented, can you pick one of the specific false claims that you addressed in your column?
Well, probably one of the biggest one is what I just mentioned about losing your house. Being in business for the last 18 years, we have saved the ability for people to stay in their house. And so that was the most egregious of all of the claims, that no, you won't lose your house. The government guarantees that as long as you live in the house and pay your taxes and insurance and follow the rules of the loan, you will not be kicked out of your house. And that was the single biggest, most important thing we wanted to get out there, because if somebody is worried about losing their house, they're not going to even talk to us, say nothing about do a reverse mortgage. And that was the most important thing that we wanted to get out there.
So this speaks to security, and of course that's going to be the primary motivation of anyone even considering a reverse mortgage. But there was also a claim that it was impacting the children or the heirs. Can you explain that a little bit better, what Ramsey's claim was about the children taking possession of the home?
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue that people get around to after they get through their own concerns is, well, what about the kids? Is this going to hurt my children? And that's the second biggest fear that people have, and he certainly has perpetuated that fear by, you're going to just leave your kids with a big bill. And I've had people specifically say, well, I don't want to leave a big bill to my children. And then when that was specifically covered in his rebuttal of reverse mortgages, that, well, this is just, if it's not a problem for you, it's going to end up being a problem for your children, that just poisons the whole thing. And it's and so untrue that the kids are not left with a big bill. And this actually helps the children. I have 4 sons. They all know that I'm going to do a reverse mortgage next year, and they're applauding it, and they're excited about it, and going to have a big party, because they know that they're not going to get as much money in my house, but they'll get a bigger check from the life insurance company. And they'll be able to have more fun, and we'll go on more vacations while I'm alive, because I'm not making several $1,000s in a house payment every month. So it actually helps the children as well as helping the senior themselves. And so it's just those 2 points had to be covered, because many children have told their parents, don't do a reverse mortgage, because it's going to be bad for me and bad for you. So we had those are 2 of the most important things I felt in covering the issues.